Hello and welcome to this video setting up the Google Infotainment system in a Volvo plug-in hybrid. The two vehicles behind me are the cars that we're going to use as a basis of reference. We're going to sit in the XC90 and go through all of the bits and bobs in there, but we will highlight the differences between XC60, XC90, the differences between their own model variants of the Core Plus and Ultra, and go through any sort of idiosyncrasies hiding within there as well. So without further ado, here we are, sat in the XC90. We're going to go through the infotainment system in front of us with a bit more of an in-depth overview than have done in previous videos potentially. So what we're going to do is focus on where everything is and actually start to go through each individual settings menu to show you what everything is, where it is, and where some of the bits are hidden that you may have had on previous cars that are restructured in here, and see how we get on. So first and foremost, overall layout of the screen, we have a home button at the very bottom of the screen. That will always bring us back to here. If we press and hold it, it will allow us to also clean the screen. So hold it for about 3-4 seconds. You can then wipe the screen clean, press it again for 3-4 seconds, and back to the home screen we go. Now, starting across the top, a couple of bits of information, top left corner, that are really good to know. LTE, with the little triangle that's there, that is showing us that we are using the car built-in SIM. So that is currently on, it's live, it's working. Now I'm going to jump ahead to something just to begin with, because one of the most important things on these cars is to make sure that you have that internal SIM card set up. So within your settings menu, you have got privacy settings and internet terms of service right at the top. If this is the first time you're getting into your new car and this hasn't been activated, you need to head into here, and instead of it saying online, it will say connect car to internet. You simply click that, give it about 5-10 seconds, and then all of a sudden this will populate. The registering, ignore that for the time being. The cars come with 4 years worth of subscription included. After that point, you'll have the ability to register to keep that SIM card running by doing a monthly pay-as-you-go kind of contract, as it were. But that is the first major thing we need to make sure to know that we've got internet working in the car. Apart from that, we have our GPS signal up here. We have our profile, so at the moment we're in the owner's profile, but we have the ability to add other profiles, and we've got the time functionality up there. Dragging the top of the screen down, we have the ability to then change profiles. If we want multiple people to have profiles in the car, saved to multiple keys, and also to have multiple app logins as well, then we can do that by adding more profiles. And you simply add the profile, and it will take you through the profile setup, which is what this notification here is telling us to do. This is also where you'll find notifications to do with general info on the car. So much like your phone, iPad, whatever you want to call it. From there, we then have maps, media, telephone, and an app of your choice. Now that's how the car will come structured from factory. You can alter that with this bottom left button here by moving tiles around. So you can download other applications to the vehicle and you can put them wherever you want them on the screen. You access those tiles by then swiping across and finding each individual app itself, and then the home button will collapse us back down. Only a few of them will have the ability to swipe the other way to load up some shortcuts. So find your favourite stations, find restaurants, parking structures, whatever it might be, based on those two apps there. Now, starting with the maps, we've used this car a minute ago for another video. Maps is a nice easy one to do. We zoom in and out, pinch and push. We can move around if we so wish. We can even skew it up and down, or we can recenter ourselves back. Now the layout of the screen is changed by this little button here. So we can either have it as a 3D perspective, a bird's eye view, or we can have a full overview. Now overview means if you put in a destination that's 600 miles away, it will zoom out to show you the entire trip, and the closer you get, the further in it will zoom in. So that's your full overview. Otherwise you've got perspective and north up, which will keep a fairly similar sort of distance on the map. You can of course zoom those in and out if you so wish. And then from here we have different alerts that we want. So we can either have full guidance, none at all, or simply to warn you if there's a change of route needed, things like that. Settings menu, you'll quite happily go through this and find the bits and bobs you want. You can change it from this traditional look to a more satellite view if you so wish. It's completely up to you, whatever your preference is. You can change the guidance, change route options, add different offline maps if you so wish. But one of the biggest things with this car being a plug-in hybrid is we can actually choose what charge points we would want to use. So for example, if you have got a card with, let's say, Ionity, and you've got a discount card with them, you can choose that it will only find Ionity chargers. So if you went back to the main screen and clicked on the charge points, if you had set that you only want Ionity ones to appear, it will only show you those on the screen here. Alternatively, we can type in anything we want. So again, looking at that theme, we could say, I want an Ionity charger, and off we go. The beauty with all of that is it can all be done through voice activation as well. So we could say, okay, Google, take me to the nearest Ionity charger.
Navigating to Genie Point charging station.
There you have it. From there, all of the other aspects are exactly the same. We simply tap in, we can scroll up and down, we've got our favourites, we've got our other stations, settings menus for the radio. Same applies for things like if you download Spotify, it will have its own settings menus. Bluetooth media does. Pairing your phone is a nice easy one. Simply click connect, it will then ask you to pair a new device. And then from there you follow the instructions on the screen, but make sure you are in the Bluetooth menu on your phone, otherwise it will not find it. And then if you have multiple phones, you want to choose whose phone does what, by simply tapping on the icons here, that dictates whose phone is controlling what aspect. And then finally, the bottom one, whatever app you choose to use, car status is a really handy one, because it might be tyre pressures, might be your oil level that you want to keep an eye on, or it could be, once that disappears out of the way, that you want to have a look at things like your service status. So if you want to double check when you next need to service the car, you can do that from here. And then finally, across the bottom, we've already seen the app menu. We've got the ability to load up the camera. So depending on what spec your car is, if you've got a camera, it may be just the rear one, or you could have this lovely 360 camera, in which case you can pick and choose whichever one you want to look at and go from there. Across the bottom, we then have whatever temperature control we need. So we've got red and blue to obviously raise or lower the temperature. We've got heated seats, and this car being an ultra model has ventilated seats as well. And we've also got a heated steering wheel, and we just pick and choose which one we want to use. Again, voice activation will turn all these on and off for you as well whilst you're on the move. And we can even go in, change fan speed, direction, so on and so forth. Really good thing that's hiding in all of the cars is the automated climate features, which are this top right triple dot here. From there, you can turn on the features that you would want to be fully automated, whether you use the app to start the car or when you jump in the car yourself in the morning, it will turn these features on for you, providing it is below 8 degrees outside. And then finally, we have the settings menu, which is our next video. We're going to just quickly stop and go into the next bit, because we're going to break down each of these nice and quickly to show you where everything's hiding. Lovely. So, whole point of the video is obviously to go through how to set up and make the car your own for the Google Infotainment system. So the biggest aspect to start with is going to be, once we've done the internet, as we mentioned earlier, our profile. Now, hopefully you'll jump in the car and this blue box will appear, in which case you follow the steps to add your Volvo ID, to add your Bluetooth phone, add your Google account, and do all your privacy settings as well. Then effectively in one fell swoop, you've covered most of the basic setup of the vehicle. If we do not have this, then we can do other aspects to make sure we have the same amount of stuff paired. Naturally, the phone can be paired from the home page, which we've seen already, but we have the ability in the accounts to add Google accounts, Volvo accounts, whatever we need to do. So Volvo would be your Volvo ID, Google would be a Gmail account of some sort, which allows the car to run all sorts of other aspects. If you are not a Google fan, you're an Apple fan, for example, and you don't have a Gmail account, I would strongly recommend making one which you can use just for the car, because it will allow things like personal results to work, which means you can dictate text messages back to people if you so wished. It also allows the voice activation to work a lot more smoothly I should say, and will also allow you to download applications. So really good to make sure you get a Google account into the car, and definitely if you want to use the app, make sure your Volvo account is in the car, because that's how you will allow the privacy settings to connect to each other. From there, we then have the app itself. Now the app, you would simply click into here, click connect, and then it will ask you to have the app loaded up on your phone, signed in, and have both keys in the car. Once you've done that, you literally follow the car and the app and follow the process. It's a nice, easy setup. You simply put the VIN number into the app, which will show up once we get to the next stage after here. We've already got a phone paired, so we can't do it on this one. But you would click pair phone. It would have the VIN number on the screen here, so you'd put that into the app, and then from there, you then go through the setup process, make sure it has matching numbers, so on and so forth. But that would then be the majority of the profile aspect set up, because you'll have done your accounts and your app. Your phone will be paired on the home screen, unless of course you have done it via that, in which case it's all done a lot quicker. Which then brings me back to setting everything else up. So once we've got the profile input, we can then start to change all of your preferences. Now, driving is our first kind of big one. So that's the first one we're going to really go through. And for this particular car, being a plug-in hybrid, we have these two aspects at the top here. If you do not have a plug-in hybrid, the chances are you will have an off-road mode that you can turn on and off. Or if you've had the car upgraded with the Polestar optimization, that will be available here as well. For this car, we have hybrid, power, pure, off-road, constant all-wheel drive. Hybrid is the default setting, so that is what the car will automatically load up in every time we get in. That means it will pick and choose, as it says here, based on the driving dynamics, what type of power the car needs to utilise. Of course, if you haven't got any electric charge, the likelihood is it will kick the engine in straight away. Power mode, as you can hear, will then basically set the car into a performance mode. So in this vehicle, both the electric motor and the engine will be prepared for more performance, just generally better throttle input, and to give you all 455 horsepower from the get-go. Hybrid mode will still do that, but it's not aimed at being performance driven, it's aimed at giving you the best of both worlds. From there, we now cannot use pure because we've put the power mode on, but pure does the opposite of power mode. It will put the car into a more eco-friendly state, but it will be electric only. So if you fully charge the car, pop it into pure mode, you can then run just on electric until obviously that has depleted itself. Alternatively, if we have fully charged the battery, we're going to jump ahead, we can actually hold that charge in the battery. So if we fully charged it, but we're going to jump straight onto the motorway, go into London, for example, we might want to save that electric range for when we get into the city, in which case you hold it, drive on the motorway. Any regenerated power will be recycled and reused straight away, but the amount that you've already charged will be held until you get to where you need to go. You can alternatively do the opposite and charge the battery up, though this is not the most economical way of doing things, because naturally you're using the engine to charge the battery and drive the vehicle. So not the best way of doing it, but it is possible. We then have off-road and constant all-wheel drive. Now, slightly confusing because the car is an all-wheel drive vehicle. So at any given time, if it needs to put power to a wheel due to loss of traction, it will do that. So don't panic, it's always going to be doing that regardless of what drive mode you're in. Constant all-wheel drive is the first one we'll go through. That is basically a bit of peace of mind for yourself that if you were towing and you're going up the Alps, weather's not overly bad, but you just want to ensure that the car is locked in an all-wheel drive state, then you can turn that on. Apart from that, like I say, your all-wheel drive system will kick in anyway. Off-road, however, is completely the opposite. That is heavy duty. In this vehicle, it will actually raise the suspension because it's got air suspension. In others, it won't do that. But what it will do is limit your top speed. It will try and limit the amount of power it's forcing through the engine so we don't get any loss of traction. And it will also turn on things like your hill descent control as well. So that is if you get caught in a boggy field, if you've been camping and the car's a bit stuck, that will get you out of trouble. Or if we get a dump of snow and you're caught short, that is the mode that you would use if you're just going to trickle maximum speed 25 miles an hour. We then have driver support, so we can change the way the car will default our cruise control settings. And we also have the ability to allow the car to warn us of upcoming speed sign changes. That one, completely up to you. If you like to be wary of what's going on, brilliant, turn it on. Naturally, in certain parts of the country, you'll be changing quite often, so there'll be quite a lot of noises that go off. We then have lane keeping aid. Now, you can switch it off completely if you're not a fan at all, or if you're just not a fan of the car trying to force you back into the lane, you can turn off the steering side of things and just have the car vibrate at you. That means lane keeping aid is still working, but it's not going to force you anywhere. It's just going to warn you through the steering wheel, basically. Again, completely up to you which one you want. And ready to drive notification, slightly confusing one. Basically, if you're sat at the traffic lights and the car in front of you pulls away, but you were chatting to your passenger, it will come up on the screen to say, are you ready to drive? Simple as that. Just a little warning just to make sure you're aware of what's going on. Now, intelligent speed assist is quite an interesting one. So if you've watched previous videos to do with setting up the cars or general overview of the vehicles, you'll know that we have on the steering wheel a button that can turn on and off the speed sign warnings or speed warning alerts. If you are going above the speed limit, the car will warn you. You can turn that off, or alternatively, you can turn this system on, which means that if the car starts to shout at you, and I say shout in the nicest way possible because it's not actually a very loud noise that it gives you, this will then allow you, if you lift off the throttle, for that system to stop beeping at you. So basically, if you're speeding, but you start to lift off the throttle because the car knows that you're reacting to the incorrect speed, then it will stop shouting at you. And then finally, we have the dynamics at the bottom here. Now, if you're lucky enough to have the air suspension, you can actually turn it off, believe it or not, or you can simply add the ability for the car to raise and lower itself based on you parking up, basically. So if you park up, the car will lower itself. As you start the car, it then raises back up to its normal height. So that's your easy entry and exit. You can turn it off. Not sure who would want to. If you've taken the car with air suspension, chances are you may have wanted it from the start, in which case, don't worry. We then have creep and steering feel firm. Now, not all cars will have the creep function. That's to do with the plug-in hybrid side of things. Or if you've got an electric car, some of them will have this function as well. This is the ability to make the car feel more like an electric car or more like a traditional automatic. At the moment, this is more like an electric car, which means when you come to a stop, put your foot on the brake, take your foot off, even if you've not got the handbrake on, it won't move forward. It waits for your input on the throttle. Because unless you tell the car that you want it to act more like a traditional automatic where you lift off the brake and it gently moves away, it won't do it. So that's what your creep function is. And then finally, steering feel firm is what it says on the tin. If you want to feel a bit more like Lando Norris on a weekend, you can make the steering feel a bit heavier, should you wish. And there we have it. That's your driving controls. Now what we're going to do is go through some of the others, but we're going to do that in little bite-sized bits. So I'm going to stop this part of the video and start again going through sound. Wonderful. So in all of our vehicles, you will have the ability to adjust sound settings. That might be your very basic treble, bass, subwoofer if they've got them, balance as well, obviously around the car. Depending on what system you then have, if you then end up with either Harman Kardon or the Bowers & Wilkins high fidelity system, you can then alter other aspects of the vehicle. For example, this car having the Bowers & Wilkins gives us the ability to adopt our own stage-like function, so we can change how many speakers are being used and how intense that sound comes from them. Or we can even decide to sit ourselves in seat 131 of Gothenburg Concert Hall. Gives us incredible clarity, especially if you're listening to a piece of music where there's lots of instrumentation. You can effectively sit here and hear where each of those instruments is going to be on the stage. You can close your eyes, picture it, you'll hear it. Obviously don't close your eyes if you're driving, because that's not a good idea. But we have that concert hall function. We also have the ability to sit in Nefertiti Jazz Club as well and have the acoustics of that very famous centre as well. Now, if you've got Harman Kardon, chances are you won't have these functions, but you'll have the ability to alter your surround sound as well, which will be hiding in your sound settings. But that is a very quick overview of your sound functions. So connectivity is the next one. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because first and foremost, probably most of us will spot Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, thinking that that means we can add Wi-Fi to the car or control our Bluetooth from here. It's actually to do with the internet the car is using. So Bluetooth, we don't really want to be going into here and turning on Bluetooth internet, because otherwise we're not going to be using the car's SIM. Most of them should have the SIM card on from the get-go, in which case the car is utilising its own internet. We do have the ability to connect the car to a Wi-Fi setting. So at home, if it's on the driveway and you want to do a big update on the car, you could use your home Wi-Fi if it's a slightly stronger connection. If the area has a weak kind of GPS signal, then it could be useful for that reason. Otherwise, I'd probably not worry too much about it. But that's literally all I'm going to worry about with connectivity, because that's all it's hiding within there. Lovely. So we now find ourselves heading into controls. And apart from driving, this is probably the biggest menu to go through, because this is preference after preference of bits and bobs that you can turn on and off. Silly things like folding the headrest down. Wiper service position just puts the wiper blades in a position where you can actually get to them. So if you need to clean them or change them, that's what that's there for. Exterior mirrors tilt when reversing. If you turn that on, both mirrors will look down to the floor, so kind of like a curb view, so that when you're reversing, you're not going to catch anything as you do that. Fog mirrors when locked, does what it says on the tin, and mirror auto dimming is also what it says on the tin. Car behind you's got bright lights, it will dim down the mirrors for you. Not all of them will have this, but adjust passenger seat gives you the ability to adjust the very basic maneuverability of the passenger seat by using the driver's controls. So that could be you've got someone a bit more elderly in the seat that doesn't know how to use them, or generally someone that's not very au fait with the controls, in which case you can help them out, assist them, and move the seat for them. And then the final one on that part of the list is wireless phone charger, to turn it on and off. You may not want it on. If you're someone using Apple CarPlay and it's being plugged in at the time being, you might want to put your phone on the little wireless charge pad, but not have any wire or any charging coming from it, because obviously then there's a bit of heat transference. Locking features, we have got a nice little block here. So reduced alarm mode is one that is a bit of a misrepresentation in terms of what it does. This is your reduced guard if you're a previous Volvo customer, or deactivation of the internal alarm. So if you are going on the ferry across the continent and you want to stop the car from setting its alarm off whilst it's in the hull, you would turn that system on. Alternatively, if you've got pets in the car that you're leaving to go and pay for your fuel, you've got kids in the car that you're doing the same thing with, they don't want to come with you, you can lock the car but turn this on, in which case they won't set off the motion sensor inside. So that's what that's there for. Unlock and lock feedback is just the lights outside the car to let you know whether it's locked or unlocked. And obviously unlocked doors, you choose whether all the doors open or just one at a time. Auto close sunroof curtain, if you are lucky enough to have obviously the lovely panoramic roof, then that is the ability for the car to close the roof, or the sun blind, sorry, if outside temperature has got too high. So if it's above, I believe it's 28 degrees, it will automatically close that curtain for you as a bit of cover from the heat, basically. And then also lock while driving, again, does what it says on the tin, locks all the doors whilst we're on the move. Couple of display options. We've got the ability to change trip information on the display in front of us as the driver, and then if you do have a head-up display, this is where you will find all of the adjustments for it. So the ability to turn it on and off for a start, but also move it around, change the brightness, so on and so forth. And then finally, a couple of light options, so how bright the internal screen is, how intense all the lights are around the car in terms of sort of the interior ambient lighting. Welcome light is obviously the lights flashing and staying on for the LED lights outside the car when we lock and unlock the car. And then the SOS button, you can turn that off. So within here you can remove the SOS functionality to stop little fingers from pressing the button and ringing emergency services. Not very often that one gets turned off, but it is there should you need it. And there we have it. So the next one we're going to go through, we've done kind of a bit of profiles and privacy, but we will go back into privacy anyway, just to have a look at those. Lovely. So, mentioned in the last little short clip, we're going to skip profiles because we've done a fair amount of that earlier on in the video anyway. And there's other videos to do with that go through the profile side of things. But in profiles, we mentioned about privacy settings. Now, this is where in privacy you'll find your internet activation, which we've already spoken about, location data, so you can make sure that's actually running. But one of the biggest things is going to be the Volvo privacy settings. Now, if you weren't able to go through and set up your profile this way, and you've had to add your account separately. Sorry, fat finger's not doing what I want it to do. Then you would need to go into here once you've added a Volvo ID and make sure you've turned on all the settings that you want on. One of the biggest ones being that the Volvo Cars app has the ability to actually utilise itself. So that is a really big part of it. You can also go through and check app permissions, things like that. It's probably not going to be a big issue. One thing that is quite handy is you can, if the vehicle is no longer going to be in your ownership, you can remove all of the data before you hand the car back. That is also found in the system settings as well, but it's hiding in there. Right, so we'll just go through the last two, and then that will be the end of our kind of walkthrough of the car. Google settings. Now, again, hiding within here, we've got all sorts of bits and bobs, diagnostics, all sorts of aspects we can do in here. The ones that you're likely to utilize are going to be Google Assistant, making sure that you have everything on that you want from Google. You can also update your home and work address from within here, but also sending feedback to Google. Now, it could be, we've had it a couple of times where we've had customers say that Google Maps isn't showing the correct speed for their road. You can go in here and say, right, well, Google Maps has a problem. What's the issue? Directions are wrong, or other, for example. And you can actually put in information, and they do upload it. So we had it here. Once this building was built, we had a new road put in to come into our dealership here, but Google Maps wasn't showing one of the directions coming towards it as having an access point. So it would then take you completely round the village to come back the other way for the sake of turning left into the building. It meant you added an extra 8 minutes onto your journey. So by putting this and sending it to Google, it has updated that, and it does now solve the problem. So if you do get any weird aspects within your Google system, it can be really handy to do that, because they do look at the logs of that, and they will update things, and it will just be part of a software update on the move as you go. So Google, quite a handy one to know for that reason. So last but not least, we have system settings. Now, most cars on the planet will have a system settings area, which is the usual things like date and time, languages, units of measurement. Really handy thing to know, in the units of measurement you can very quickly change the clocks to kilometers per hour. So if you are going onto the continent, you want to use the car, you can very quickly change that, and your digital display for the driver will show that. We've also got within here the ability to check up software updates, find general information about the car, VIN number, possibly the only thing you would look for within here. And then you'll also find a lot of reset options, a lot of storage, so it will tell you what's being held in what area. Kind of a basic overview of the built-in system to the car. But as I mentioned, reset options, there's lots of bits you can do in here. So again, if you are going to change ownership of the vehicle, you can come in here and change an awful lot of those aspects, remove information that you don't want on the car, so on and so forth. And there we have it, a bit of an overview of the Google Infotainment system. Naturally, obviously, we were going through the plug-in hybrid and highlighting some of those bits, but it doesn't mean to say that if you've got a mild hybrid XC40, mild hybrid XC90, that a lot of the settings won't be there, a lot of the functionality won't be the same. So hopefully this video will help you for the future to make sure you know what's in your car, where it is, and how to set it up.